Spurs may have seen enough. The most dangerous thing in the NBA is not a missed shot, it is not one bad turnover, it is not even a brutal loss on national television. The most dangerous thing is when a team quietly stops trusting the player who is supposed to lead them. And right now, that is exactly what appears to be happening with De'Aaron Fox in San Antonio. This was supposed to be the perfect reset. A fresh city, a young superstar in Victor Wembanyama, a legendary organization known for discipline, patience, and winning habits. Fox was not walking into chaos. He was walking into opportunity. But instead of becoming the steady engine next to Wemby, he has become the question nobody inside that building can ignore anymore. Can the Spurs really build their future around a guard who keeps breaking down when the game gets tight? Because this is no longer about talent. Nobody is denying Fox can move. Nobody is pretending he does not have speed, handle, and the ability to attack the rim. That has never been the problem. The problem is what happens when the easy part is over, when the defense adjusts, when the crowd gets loud, when every possession matters. That is when stars are separated from players who only look dangerous in highlights. And Game 4 may have been the moment San Antonio finally felt the truth hit them. The turnovers were not random. The poor decisions were not isolated. The body language, the rush possessions, the defensive lapses, the lack of control in the most important moments, all pointed towards something much bigger. This was not just one ugly night. This looked like a pattern. And that is why the old Sacramento clip matters so much. Because once fans saw Fox making the same type of late game mistake years ago, the conversation changed completely. Suddenly, people were not asking, did Fox have a bad game? They were asking, has this always been who he is under pressure? That is the question haunting the Spurs right now. Because San Antonio is not just trying to win a few regular season games. They are trying to protect the future of Victor Wembanyama. They are trying to build a real contender. And in that kind of mission, trust is everything. So before we go deeper, let me know where you are watching from. If you think Fox deserves one more chance, press 1 in the comments. If you think the Spurs should move on before this damages the rebuild, press 2. And if you are new here, subscribe now, because this story is only getting darker. The game that changed everything. If Spurs fans are searching for the exact moment things started falling apart, many of them keep coming back to one game. Game 4, not because San Antonio got blown out, not because the opponent was unbeatable, and not because Fox suddenly forgot how to play basketball. What made this game so alarming was something far worse. The mistakes felt familiar. From the opening minutes, Fox looked uncomfortable. The speed was still there, the athleticism was still there, he could still get into the paint whenever he wanted, but every positive play seemed to be followed by a decision that completely erased it. One possession would end with an explosive drive, the next possession would end with a careless turnover. One moment, he looked like the dynamic guard Spurs executives envisioned. The next moment, he looked completely disconnected from what the game was asking him to do. And that inconsistency slowly started poisoning the entire flow of the team. Basketball at the highest level is about rhythm. Championship teams build momentum possession by possession. They make smart reads. They value the ball. They understand game situation. The Spurs were trying to build momentum all night. Fox kept stopping it. Every time San Antonio looked ready to make a run, another mistake arrived at the worst possible moment. A forced pass into traffic, a rushed attack against multiple defenders, a possession that ended without Wembanyama even touching the basketball. Those are the plays that drive coaches crazy. Not because they appear on highlight shows, because they destroy trust. Imagine being Victor Wembanyama. You are the centerpiece of the franchise. Every defensive scheme is focused on stopping you. Yet there are critical possessions where the ball never reaches your hands because your point guard has already made a decision before reading the floor. That is the type of basketball that limits growth. And inside NBA organizations, growth is everything. As the game moved into the second half, the pressure increased. The margin for error became smaller. This is where elite guards usually shine. This is where leaders calm the game down and put teammates in the right position. Instead, the opposite happened. The faster the game became, the more rushed Fox appeared. The louder the arena became, the more uncertain his decisions looked. You could almost feel the frustration building on the Spurs bench. Not because of one turnover, not because of one bad shot. Because of the accumulation, every mistake was another piece of evidence supporting a conversation nobody wanted to have. What if this isn't temporary? What if this isn't bad luck? What if this is simply who De'Aaron Fox becomes when the pressure reaches its highest level? By the time the fourth quarter arrived, the discussion was no longer about winning one basketball game. It was about whether the Spurs could realistically trust Fox to guide a rebuilding team toward championship contention. And unfortunately for him, the final minutes only made those doubts even louder. The reputation problem. Nobody can ignore. Every NBA player goes through slumps. Even superstars have stretches where the shots do not fall, the turnovers pile up, and the criticism becomes impossible to avoid. But what De'Aaron Fox is facing right now is different. This is no longer about statistics. It is about reputation. And reputations in the NBA are incredibly difficult to change once they take hold. There was a time when Fox was viewed as one of the league's most exciting young guards. Scouts loved his speed, coaches loved his aggression, fans believed he would eventually develop into the type of franchise player organizations spend decades searching for. The potential felt limitless. People imagined all-star appearances, deep playoff runs, a future built around his leadership. For a while, those expectations seemed realistic. Then something unexpected happened. The talent kept showing up, the consistency never did. That is the most frustrating part for fans. Fox still produces flashes that make you believe. A quick first step, a spectacular finish at the rim, a stretch where he completely takes over a game. Those moments remind everyone why expectations became so high in the first place. But just when confidence starts to return, another mistake appears. A turnover in a critical possession, a defensive lapse at the worst possible moment, a decision that leaves teammates shaking their heads. And over time, those moments start defining a player more than his highlights. That is exactly what has happened here. Around the league, there are players fans love because they consistently make winning plays. There are players fans dislike because they are villains who still help their teams win. Then there are players who create a completely different type of frustration. Players whose talent constantly promises more than their results deliver. Fox has increasingly fallen into that category. The criticism is not coming from people who think he lacks ability. It is coming from people who believe he should be much better than this. That distinction matters. Because disappointment is often stronger than dislike, fans can forgive a role player for making mistakes. They struggle to forgive a highly paid star making the same mistakes year after year. And that frustration has spread far beyond San Antonio. Across basketball media, podcasts, forums, and social media discussions, the same question keeps surfacing. Why does a player with this much natural ability continue making the same costly decisions? Nobody questions his athletic gifts. Nobody questions his effort. The concern is whether his basketball decision-making can ever reach the level required to lead a championship caliber team. For the Spurs, that question is becoming impossible to ignore, because while fans argue online, San Antonio's front office is thinking about something much bigger. Victor Wembanyama's future. Every season mattered. Every roster move mattered. Every teammate mattered. And if the organization begins believing Fox's reputation accurately reflects who he is as a player, then a difficult decision may be approaching much faster than anyone expected. What happens next becomes even more interesting when an old moment from Sacramento suddenly reappears and changes the entire conversation. The clip that refused to die. Then the internet found the old Sacramento clip, and everything changed. It showed Fox in a late-game situation where the Kings only needed one smart defensive possession. The assignment was simple: stay close to the shooter, avoid a foul, and protect the lead. Instead, Fox lost his man, gave up space, then made contact on the three-point attempt. The whistle came, the free throws followed, and a game Sacramento should have controlled turned into a nightmare. At the time, people called it a young player mistake, but after Game 4 inches San Antonio, that clip looked different. Same pressure. Same confusion. Same type of costly decision, different jersey, same concern. That is why fans reacted so strongly. This no longer looked like one bad night. It looked like a pattern following Fox from Sacramento to San Antonio. And for a Spurs team trying to build around Victor Wembanyama, that is the scariest part, because talent can excite a franchise, but repeated mistakes can destroy trust. Sacramento's warning and San Antonio's reality. The most uncomfortable part of this entire story is that Spurs fans are beginning to sound exactly like Kings fans did a few years ago. Back then, Sacramento believed Fox would eventually put everything together. The talent was obvious, the speed was elite, the scoring ability was real. Every season brought fresh optimism that the next version of De'Aaron Fox would finally become the player everyone imagined. But year after year, the same concerns kept resurfacing. Not effort, not talent, decision-making. Meanwhile, San Antonio arrived at this partnership believing things would be different. The Spurs are one of the most respected organizations in basketball. They have a history of developing players, building culture, and maximizing talent better than almost anyone in the league. If any franchise could unlock the best version of Fox, many believed it would be them. That belief is now being tested, because when coaches review film, they are not just evaluating statistics. They are evaluating habits. Winning habits, championship habits, the little details that separate contenders from pretenders, and those details matter more than ever when Victor Wembanyama is involved. Every possession is now part of a much bigger mission. Every game is helping shape the future around a generational talent. The Spurs cannot afford repeated mistakes from from one of their most important players. That is why frustration appears to be growing, not because Fox lacks ability, because the same issues continue appearing despite the change in environment. Different coach, different teammates, different system, yet some of the same questions remain. Can he be trusted in the biggest moments? Can he consistently make winning plays? Can he become the reliable veteran presence Wembanyama needs beside him? Those questions are becoming harder to answer, and inside NBA front offices, uncertainty is danger. Teams can live with physical limitations, teams can live with shooting slumps. What they struggle to live with is unpredictability. Right now, the Spurs are facing a difficult reality. They may have acquired a player with tremendous talent, but they also inherited concerns that Sacramento spent years trying to solve. And if those concerns continue growing, San Antonio may soon be forced to make a decision that once seemed impossible. A decision that could dramatically change the future of both De'Aaron Fox and the Spurs. The Wembanyama factor changes everything. There is one reason this situation feels far more serious than a normal player contract. Victor Wembanyama. If the Spurs were a team stuck in the middle of the standings without a clear direction, they could afford patience. They could spend years waiting for players to figure things out. That is not the reality anymore. When you have a generational talent like Wembanyama, the timeline changes immediately. Every season matters. Every roster move matters. Every decision must answer one question. Does this help maximize Wembanyama's future? That is the lens through which San Antonio is evaluating everything right now. And when viewed through that lens, the Fox conversation becomes much more complicated because Wembanyama needs more than talent around him. He needs stability. He needs teammates who understand situations. He needs players who can make the correct read when defenses collapse. Most importantly, he needs teammates he can trust when the pressure reaches championship levels. That is where concerns begin to grow. Imagine being the centerpiece of the franchise. Every opponent designs its game plan around stopping you. Every night you face double teams, physical defense, and constant attention. The last thing you need is uncertainty from the player handling the ball the most. Championship teams are built on predictability. Not boring predictability, winning predictability, knowing where teammates will be, knowing the right decision will be made, knowing that when the game enters crunch time, everyone remains composed. For years, the Spurs built dynasties around exactly those principles. Tim Duncan represented them. Tony Parker represented them. Manu Ginobili represented them. The organization became famous for smart basketball rather than flashy basketball. That culture is part of what made San Antonio special. Now the franchise is attempting to build the next era around Wembanyama. The challenge is determining whether Fox truly fits that vision. Because talent alone has never been enough for the Spurs. Basketball IQ matters. Discipline matters. Consistency matters. Trust matters. And when questions begin forming around those qualities, front offices pay attention. What makes this even more important is Wembanyama's development stage. He is still learning how to dominate the NBA. The players around him will influence that growth every single day. The habits he sees, the decisions he witnesses, the culture he experiences, all of it matters. That is why reports of frustration inside the organization carry so much weight. The Spurs are not simply evaluating Fox's box scores. They are evaluating whether he helps create the environment needed for a future championship team. And if the answer becomes no, talent alone will not save him. Because in San Antonio, protecting Wembanyama's future will always come first. The contract pressure is getting real. This is where the situation becomes even more difficult for San Antonio. De'Aaron Fox is not a low-risk experiment. He is not a young bench player the Spurs can quietly develop without pressure. He is a major name, a major role, and a major financial commitment. That changes everything. When a player carries that kind of value, the standard becomes higher. Teams do not simply ask if he can score. They ask if he can justify the money, the minutes, and the responsibility. Right now, that question is getting uncomfortable. Because if Fox is making star-level money, he must deliver star-level reliability. Not just speed, not just occasional scoring bursts, reliability. The Spurs need someone who can calm the offense, protect possessions, defend with focus, and make Wembanyama's life easier. If Fox cannot consistently do that, his contract becomes a problem. And once a contract becomes a problem, trade value starts changing fast. Around the league, front offices are always watching. They see the turnovers, they see the late game mistakes, they see the old Sacramento clip going viral again. That affects perception. A team may still believe in Fox's talent, but belief does not mean they will pay full price. If San Antonio decides to explore a trade, rival teams will use every concern as leverage. That puts the Spurs in a dangerous position. Move them too soon, and they may sell low. Wait too long, and the situation could get worse. That is the pressure building behind the scenes. This is not only about one player anymore. It is about protecting flexibility, protecting culture, and protecting the future around Victor Wembanyama. The Spurs cannot afford emotional decisions, but they also cannot ignore repeated warning signs. At some point, Every organization must decide whether a talented player is part of the solution or part of the problem. And for De'Aaron Fox, that decision may be closer than anyone expected. 3 paths forward. At this point, the Spurs may be approaching a crossroad. And regardless of what happens next, the decision could shape the next several years of the franchise. The first path is simple. Stay the course. Keep Fox in the starting lineup. Trust the talent, and hope the recent criticism becomes the wake-up call he needs. There is logic behind this approach. After all, talented players have rebuilt their reputations before. Plenty of NBA careers have survived difficult stretches. Sometimes one breakthrough performance can completely change the narrative. The problem is that patience becomes harder when the same concerns keep resurfacing. Every additional mistake increases the pressure. Every disappointing performance makes the questions louder. And eventually, patience runs out. The second path is a trade. This is the option many fans are already discussing. If the Spurs believe Fox is not the right long-term fit next to Wembanyama, moving him while he still has value may be the smartest business decision. A trade could bring draft assets, it could bring younger players, it could bring role players who fit the culture more naturally. The challenge, however, is timing. Trade too early and you risk giving away talent. Trade too late and the market may shrink dramatically. That balancing act is what makes front office decisions so difficult. Then there is the third path, the most dramatic path, the one nobody expected to be discussing when Fox arrived in San Antonio. The possibility that the Spurs eventually decide to move on completely. For any organization, that would be a major statement. It would signal that culture, trust, and long-term vision matter more than raw ability. Whether that scenario actually happens remains unclear, but the fact that people are even discussing it shows how quickly perceptions can change in the NBA. A few months ago, the conversation was about how dangerous the Spurs could become with Fox and Wembanyama together. Today, the conversation is whether that partnership can survive. That shift alone tells you everything about how serious this situation has become. And as the pressure continues building, all eyes remain on Fox, because ultimately, the next chapter of this story may depend entirely on how he responds. A career-defining moment. Every NBA career eventually reaches a moment where excuses stop mattering. A moment when potential no longer carries the same weight. A moment when results become the only thing people care about. For De'Aaron Fox, that moment may be arriving right now. Because the conversation surrounding him is no longer centered on what he could become. It is centered on who he is today. For years, fans have pointed to his talent as evidence that a breakthrough was coming. Coaches believed experience would solve the decision-making issues. Organizations believed the right system would unlock another level. But eventually, time becomes part of the evaluation. And time is moving quickly. The NBA is one of the most unforgiving environments in professional sports. Every season introduces younger players. Every draft produces new talent. Every team searches relentlessly for reliable contributors. Potential has an expiration date. At some point, players must transform expectations into trust. That is the challenge standing directly in front of Fox. Because right now, many people around the league see a player caught between two realities. One reality shows an explosive guard capable of changing a game with his speed and scoring ability. The other reality shows a player whose mistakes often arrive during the moments that matter most. Those two versions continue battling each other, and the outcome may determine the rest of his career. What makes this situation especially difficult is that public perception is beginning to harden. Fans can forgive mistakes. They can forgive poor shooting nights. They can even forgive losing seasons. What they struggle to forgive is repetition. Seeing the same issue over and over eventually changes belief into doubt. And doubt is dangerous. Once teammates begin questioning decisions, once coaches begin shortening trust, once front offices begin exploring alternatives, the clock starts ticking. That does not mean Fox cannot change the narrative. In fact, this may be the perfect opportunity to do exactly that. Great players have responded to criticism before. They have used doubt as fuel. They have transformed weaknesses into strengths. But those turnarounds begin with accountability. They begin with recognizing the problem rather than ignoring. The next few games, the next few months, and perhaps the next season could determine whether Fox reclaims control of his story or becomes another talented player remembered for opportunities that never fully became reality. Because the truth is simple. The Spurs are watching, the league is watching, the fans are watching, and for perhaps the first time in his career, De'Aaron Fox is running out of room for mistakes. The lesson San Antonio cannot ignore. In the end, this story is bigger than De'Aaron Fox. It is about what a serious NBA franchise must protect when the future is finally in its hand. The Spurs have Victor Wembanyama, and that changes everything. When a team has a player with that kind of ceiling, the mission becomes clear. Build carefully, choose teammates wisely, protect the culture, do not waste years chasing talent that does not fit the bigger vision. That is the lesson San Antonio cannot ignore. Fox still has ability, he still has speed, he still has nights where he looks impossible to guard, But the NBA is not only about what a player can do at his best, it is about what a player can be trusted to do when everything becomes difficult. Can he stay calm? Can he make the right read? Can he defend without losing focus? Can he put the team above the moment? Those are the questions that matter now. For Fox, this should not be viewed only as criticism, it should be viewed as a warning and an opportunity. A warning that reputation can change quickly and an opportunity to prove growth is still possible. For the Spurs, the path must remain disciplined. They cannot panic, but they also cannot pretend. Repeated mistakes do not matter. The best organizations make decisions before small problems become permanent damage. And for fans, there is a human lesson here too. Talent is powerful, but talent without responsibility can become unstable. Pressure reveals habits. Leadership requires humility. Growth only happens when a person is willing to face uncomfortable truth. Maybe Fox responds and rebuilds trust. Maybe San Antonio decides the fit is broken. But whatever happens next, the Spurs must protect their future with patience, honesty, and courage. Because championships are not built on highlights alone. They are built on trust, discipline, sacrifice, and the willingness to make hard decisions before it is too late. Now, I want to hear from you. If you think Fox can still fix this, press 1-inch the comments. If you think the Spurs must move on, press 2. If you are watching from San Antonio, Sacramento, New York, or anywhere else, drop your city below. And if you enjoyed this breakdown, subscribe to the channel, like the video, and share it with another NBA fan because this story is far from finished.